Yalda will be back on Monday, and The Wrap with Gillian Joseph is up next. Good night.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you.
So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Roger and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
A historic day here today.
Congratulations, this is a huge moment.
But what happens now?
Tonight on The Wrap, the US and Iran stand firm. As fears of a full-blown energy crisis persist, Donald Trump says his military operation is ahead of schedule, and Benjamin Netanyahu claims Iran is weaker than ever.
I thought it would be worse, much worse, actually. I thought there was a chance it could be much worse. It's not bad, and it's going to be over with pretty soon.
We are winning, and Iran is being decimated. Iran's missile and drone arsenal is being massively degraded and will be destroyed.
A senior Iranian foreign ministry spokesperson tells our international affairs editor his country cannot be expected to show restraint until the US and Israel stop their military campaign.
Do you think it would be really realistic to offer olive branch to those who want to behead you?
More students in Kent are offered the meningitis B vaccine as the number of cases linked to the outbreak rises. The vaccination centre at the university is forced to close early due to lack of capacity. The COVID inquiry says the NHS came close to collapse during the pandemic. The impact on patients and healthcare workers is laid bare as millions of non-urgent operations were cancelled. We'll discuss the day's biggest stories with Labour peer and broadcaster Baroness Aisha Hazarika and journalist and commentator Henry Hill. Plus, the first look at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers, including how the Iran war is having an impact on global markets. Good evening. Now, as oil and gas prices continue to rise, fighting talk from all sides in the Iran war, with Donald Trump emphasising it was his Israeli counterpart who decided to bomb Iran's oil fields. Benjamin Netanyahu confirmed that tonight, but denied he pushed the US president to go to war. Aisha and Henry, what did you make of that denial?
Well, I mean, there's just been so many different positions from Donald Trump on this. You know, we've won the war. We don't need your help. Please, can you send ships? You know, he started it. It's finished. It's all over the place. I mean, it kind of feels like somebody quite unhinged has managed to break into the cockpit and we're all part of this plane journey. And I think for a lot of people here, we are so worried now, waking up to the economic consequences. Our economics are very much going to be shaped by the whims of Donald Trump.
Henry?
I mean, Donald Trump says his war is ahead of schedule. I don't know if he's published this schedule anywhere. I'd really like to see it, because, as Aisha said, originally he was saying a week or two ago that the whole thing was already done and dusted. So this is the kind of thing that any government planning on attacking Iran should have planned for. It sits on a global oil choke point, and the US appears not to have done so.
Well, today President Trump said he intended not to have US troops on the ground in Iran, and his operation, as we were saying, is ahead of schedule. Take a listen to what he had to say.
Iran is a serious threat to the world, to the Middle East and to the world. And everybody agrees with me. I think virtually every country agrees with me on that. So I wanted to put out that fire. And I said, you know, if I do that, oil prices will go up, the economy will go down a little bit. I thought it would be worse, much worse, actually. I thought there was a chance it could be much worse. It's not bad, and it's going to be over with pretty soon.
Have you talked to Prime Minister Netanyahu about attacking the oil and gas fields?
Yeah, I did. I told him, don't do that, and he won't do that. We didn't discuss. You know, we do, we're independent, we get along great. It's coordinated, but on occasion he'll do something, and if I don't like it, and so we're not doing that anymore.
Fact number one, Israel acted alone against the Slawiya gas compound. Fact number two, President Trump asked us to hold off on future attacks, and we're holding out. What do we see? What happens if are there any signs that the Iranian regime is cracking? A lot of signs. A lot of signs. I wish I could divulge all of them. We are winning, and Iran is being decimated. Iran's missile and drone arsenal is being massively degraded and will be destroyed.
So let's bring in our US correspondent now, David Blevins, who's in Washington for us. And David, Netanyahu there admitting that President Trump told him to stop attacks on Iranian infrastructure, but denying that he forced President Trump into this war.
Well, yes, Gillian, but we've had 3 weeks of contradictions, and today we got one in real time in the Oval Office. Last night, President Trump had posted on Truth Social that the United States knew nothing, those were the words he used, of Israel's plan to attack the South Pars gas field in Iran. But when asked today in the Oval Office if he had discussed it with Benjamin Netanyahu, he said, yes, I did. We get on great, but act independently. And then a US official confirmed to our colleagues at NBC News that Israel had indeed given the United States advance notice of its plan to strike last night. So we had a denial, if you like, online last night, and then we had an admission of sorts on camera today. The president was also asked if he planned to put boots on the ground in Iran. He said no, but then qualified it, adding, if I did, I wouldn't tell you. And that's reminiscent of what he said almost 3 weeks ago when asked if he planned to start bombing Iran. He said no, but if I did, I wouldn't tell you.
David, at the briefing at the White House from President Trump today, he spoke about Japan stepping up to help in the war, unlike NATO, so more criticism of NATO there, but he made this off remark about Pearl Harbor.
Yes, it was a tricky bilateral meeting for the Japanese Prime Minister, Sanaa Takaishi. Japan being one of the allies that chose not to respond to his plea for help in the Strait of Hormuz. Now, diplomatically speaking, she was treading very carefully, condemning Iran for attacking its neighbours and expressing confidence in President Trump. But he appeared to have dispensed with protocol entirely. There was a jaw-dropping moment when a visiting journalist asked the president why he hadn't informed his allies of his plan to start bombing Iran. Let's just listen to how he replied.
Why didn't you tell US allies in Europe and Asia, like Japan, about the war before attacking Iran? So we are very confused about we Japanese citizens.
Well, one thing, you don't want to signal too much. You know, when we go in, we went in very hard, and we didn't tell anybody about it because we wanted surprise. Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Okay? Why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor? Okay? Right? You know, he's asking me, no, you believe in surprise, I think much more so than us. And we had to surprise him, and we did.
You heard the audible gasps there and then the silence. People couldn't quite believe that he had cited one of the darkest moments in the history of US-Japanese relations. But the president's own son, Eric, within a few moments, had reposted online his father's comments with laughing emojis and the words, one of the greatest responses to a reporter in history. Now, just imagine for a moment if during President Trump's visit to Japan last year, the Japanese Prime Minister had chosen to start talking about Hiroshima or Nagasaki.
Unbelievable. David, thank you very much for the moment. I mean, the face of the Japanese Prime Minister, your mouth is open, you're aghast.
I mean,
that's the first time that you saw that.
Awful. I mean, I'd read it, but actually to see it in all its kind of glory stroke horror, I mean, it cannot just be said enough. You know, the office of the President of the United States is such an auspicious, amazing, historic. Day by day, he demeans it like these leaders coming to see him. He had Michael Martin, you know. Yes, it's just it's like watching a Saturday. It's like watching a Saturday Night Live sketch every single time. Except it's not funny because it's all incredibly serious. It's mind-bending.
It's reality. And Eric Trump adding to the insult by saying that's the best retort to a journalist that he'd heard, and it was funny.
I mean, maybe it's just a hallmark of a hangover from Trump's reality TV career, right? Because Donald Trump would be very funny on television if this was fictitious, right? You can just imagine that in some kind of farcical film. But this is a real country, real diplomacy with real stakes. And even if you just take aside the absurd nature of the comment, what's he implying? That he can't trust his allies? That he couldn't tell Japan because Japan would tell Iran? There's actually, if you decode that comment, a real insult to America's allies in that statement, below the absurdity.
Let's just go back to David. I wonder if you can just comment on what that news conference was like. Well, wasn't technically a news conference, but what it was like after he'd made that Pearl Harbor comment. I mean, the face of the Japanese Prime Minister was a picture.
Well, if it was anyone else, I think there would be disbelief. But we've almost grown accustomed to Donald Trump behaving in this way, and these things often being passed off as jokes. You'll remember just a couple of days ago speaking at a St Patrick's event on Capitol Hill in the presence of the Northern Ireland Deputy First Minister. He also suggested that there should be a merger between Northern Ireland and the Republic, proposing in a hilarious way, he thought, Irish unity, another very sensitive subject. But he continues to perhaps use humour to play down the challenges that are faced currently by the US military by just insisting that the enemy is being obliterated. That's the word he uses a lot. And describing the war in Iran as a little excursion and insisting they're weeks ahead of schedule and it's all going to be over very soon.
Yeah, David, thank you. Aisha, that's something he's been saying over and over again, that it's going very well, it's ahead of schedule, and they're winning this war. And it'll be over when he feels it in his bones.
Well, I mean, I think it feels like he is genuinely unhinged at this point. And, you know, he used to make a lot of comments about Joe Biden's cognitive state. And I'm not trying to say this to be funny or insulting. I think there is a genuine question over his mental faculties right now. The idea that this war is anywhere over and he'll just get a feeling and then it's all going to be over. Henry made a really, really excellent point at the beginning about having done no planning. Like, whatever you think about Iran, and they are, in my view, an evil, murderous, a brutal dictatorship, they're also dug in now. And they've worked out pretty early on that Strait of Hormuz is an absolute point of leverage for them. They're going to sort of dig in, and they're not going to change their behaviour until they feel that they have done America and the rest of us some severe economic damage, and I don't think they've even got started yet.
Well, should we hear from Tehran now, where a senior Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson official has told our international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn, that the regime is not ready to negotiate.
You cannot expect a country that is under military aggression to exercise restraint. You have to direct your call to those aggressors. They started this aggression. They have to stop.
It sounds, though, to people listening, therefore, that Iran is prepared to escalate at whatever the cost. And we've heard from your colleagues saying this is not the time for diplomacy. This is the time to defend Iran. But I think people listening are desperate to hear there's some kind of progress. Is there any kind of olive branch you can offer to your enemies to say, there is something you can talk about, a way out of this crisis before it engulfs the whole region and possibly further beyond?
Do you think it would be really realistic to offer olive branch to those who want to behead you? They are killing our elites. They are targeting our leaders. So we are facing a combination of acts of terrorism and acts of aggression and terrorism. And this is unprecedented. So this killing spree has to stop. They have killed so many people across Iran. So you cannot expect the country that is defending itself against this barbaric act of aggression to show olive branch to those who knows no boundary in targeting your country.
We're hearing from the Americans the possibility, growing talk of boots on the ground, of some kind of invasion. And the American president is asking for billions of dollars from the US Congress to continue this campaign. Do you think we're getting closer to that moment where American boots are put on the ground in Iran? And is your country preparing for that possibility?
I'm sure our armed forces are prepared for every scenario. You see what happened the first day.
Including invasion?
You see, we do not welcome invasion, we do not welcome war, but we have shown that we are prepared for every scenario, because this is our homeland. This is our homeland, and we are patriotic people. We know that they are not right. We are rightful defender of Iran. So we don't care what it takes for us to defend our homeland with all we have.
What kind of reception, though, can American troops expect if they are to invade Iran?
I'm sure many people are waiting for them.
Iran's not ready to negotiate.
No. Again, why would it be? One of these, the big question with regime change, right, if that's what you're trying to do, is who's taking over.
Actually, just rewind. Is that what America is trying to do? Because it seems that their objectives have changed. That was what they were saying at the beginning.
I mean, I don't know. We don't know the schedule. We don't know the plan. We don't know what they're actually trying to achieve. But assuming that your goal was to remove the Islamic Republic government, then you need people prepared to take it over. Now, that, again, takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of intelligence work. You know, in the Cold War, for better or worse, America was quite good at this. But here, again, there's clearly no plan. America has no idea who it's supposed to be negotiating with, what demands it has for them. Yeah, the problem when you're saying we're going to completely destroy X is that they have no incentive to negotiate with you, right? And America has made it quite clear that it is there to just smash things. I say it's made it quite clear. It's not made it clear at all what it actually wants, which again means that if you're an Iranian who maybe in the Iranian government was thinking about negotiating or was potentially minded to negotiate, America hasn't made demands, like reasonable demands. It's not giving you a pathway.
And, you know, we had Tulsi Gabbard basically say there was no evidence that Iran was about to launch some kind of nuclear attack on America. And the point is absolutely well made. There is no civil society in Iran. There is no functional opposition. They have hollowed out any political capacity, ability for people to organise or mobilise. They don't have a kind of functioning, democracy is the wrong word, but even like political opposition, there isn't an organised political opposition. So it's all very well going, rise up, even though thousands and thousands of citizens were literally executed just at the beginning of the year. There's been no plan. And if they were really serious about doing this, they should have moved their military vessels to the Strait of Hormuz before they started bombing.
The idea that perhaps it is the time to negotiate, which has been mooted from the United States of America, you can understand Iran's position in saying that, well, the last time we negotiated with them, they hit us in June. This time we were in the midst of negotiations which seemingly were going quite well, and they struck again.
Yeah, it is important just to note here that, of course, Iran has continued at the same time to run a network of proxies all over the Middle East and attack its neighbours as well. It's not as if the Iranian regime has clean hands here, but absolutely there has been that breakdown of trust. And I think on the American side, I think the Americans said that they offered Iran free nuclear fuel forever in exchange for ending their enrichment programme. The Iranians said no because they want a sovereign enrichment capacity or because they want the bomb, depending on what you believe. But there's never been a meeting point here. That's the problem with these negotiations from the beginning. And now the Iranian regime didn't immediately buckle. And it might be that there's another end to the bell curve where they've finally taken so much punishment that something breaks. I think the only institution in Iran that could possibly move against the Islamic government is the army, but there's no sign that it's doing that yet. But at the moment, understandably, if you were bombed, if this country was bombed, if any country's bombed, if you don't collapse immediately, you dig in, right? You want to fight back.
And if you dig in and you have leverage over this incredibly important piece of water where 20% of the world's oil goes through, guess what? You're not going to give that up.
And do you think that Donald Trump completely underestimated the fight back from Iran? The regime is still in place despite the number of hits that it's sustained.
Yeah, it's hard to say with Donald Trump what he was thinking about anything. But given his base hate foreign conflicts, I think it seemed almost certain that he very complacently assumed that this would be something where America could fly in, do a load of air power stuff and have it done and dusted in a couple of weeks. That was clearly a catastrophic misjudgment.
Should we take a viewpoint from Iran now? Our international diplomatic editor, Dominic Waghorn, and his team are amongst the few international news crews inside Iran. They persevered with a sporadic internet connection to speak with my colleague Yalda Hakim in an extra episode of her World podcast, discussing the war's impact on civilians and difficulties in reporting there.
It's so rare to also get access to Iran, especially in this moment. Your handful of journalists who are there at the moment. Just talk us through what it's been like operating there. We talked a little bit about the connectivity issues, having no internet, but just also accessing ordinary people. Are you able to freely talk to people as well?
We're able to talk to anybody we want to and get a pretty clear picture of the impact of what is being done to their neighbourhoods. And I think the point to make is that, the Israelis and Americans say they're using precision-targeted strikes, but they are attacking cities. And if you use 2,000-pound bombs in residential areas, whatever you're targeting, you're going to cause a lot of collateral damage in the area around it. And there's no doubt civilians are being badly hurt, many of them being badly injured, and some of them being killed as well, and heartbreaking stories we've found in hospitals here. And people aren't really being, they're not being backward about coming forward talking about what's happening to them.
That's interesting, isn't it, that people are prepared to speak in Iran, because that's something that perhaps we thought they'd be fearful of.
Well, I think certainly from anecdotal evidence that's coming up, you have to just feel for the citizens of Iran. They're in this absolutely terrible position. They have a regime which many of them absolutely hate and despise, and many of them are still burying their dead from what happened at the beginning of the year. But as I said earlier, it's very, very difficult for them to organise and rise up. It's not as simple as saying just rise up and take to the streets when the IRGC are so incredibly violent and bloodthirsty in terms of the retribution. But they're a very unhappy people.
Let's bring it back to the response here as the UK is concerned. The Prime Minister has issued a joint statement with the leaders of France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands and Japan, saying they're ready to help ensure safe passage for shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. Well, the statement says we condemn in the strongest terms recent attacks by Iran on unarmed commercial vessels in the Gulf, attacks on civilian infrastructure, including oil and gas installations, and the de facto closure of the Strait of Hormuz by Iranian forces. We express our deep concern about the escalating conflict. We call on Iran to cease immediately its threats, laying of mines, drone and missile attacks and other attempts to block the strait to commercial shipping, and to comply with UN Security Council Resolution 2817. Well, our chief political correspondent John Craig joins us now. That statement obviously read out the full detail of it there, but what does it actually mean? What will they be doing now?
Well, the key sentence is where they say we express our readiness to contribute to appropriate efforts to ensure safe passage through the strait. And they go on to say we welcome the commitment of nations who are engaging in preparatory planning. Well, appropriate is clearly the key word there, not indiscriminate attacks, bombing or whatever. And also this business about preparatory planning. Well, the UK is already involved in that. The UK has sent a team of military planners to... There's an air base in Tampa, Florida, which is the air base where they are planning the American campaign. So that's already happening. Now, this came on a day when the Prime Minister, first of all, chaired a COBRA meeting. Then he put out this statement. It's significant, I think, the number of people, 6 countries. We're used to Britain, France and Germany, and sometimes Italy as well, but it's Britain, France, Germany, Italy, Netherlands, and, significantly, Sanai Takaichi, who, of course, we saw with President Trump in the White House today. And, of course, the president, again, has been insulting NATO and saying, well, Japan have been good, but NATO hasn't. Of course, Japan's nothing to do with NATO because it's not in the North Atlantic, but they are allies of NATO, certainly. And then the Prime Minister also, I'm just taking you through his day, talked to the leaders of the countries who've been hit by these bomb attacks, Qatar and Kuwait. He spoke to the Emir of Qatar and to the Crown Prince of Kuwait. Obviously, he talked about the attacks and so on. In the meeting with Qatar, the PM talked about the worsening the severe economic impacts being felt globally, including in the UK. And then finally, the Defence Secretary, John Healey, was up at the barracks in Edinburgh this afternoon, and he said, we will step up the defensive support that we can offer to those Gulf states. So they keep stressing this word defensive, of course, and that's why I think they've used the word appropriate there in that joint statement.
Henry, do you think Iran is going to differentiate between offensive and defensive?
I mean, maybe not depending on who they hit, but I think what Iran wants to do, if Iran is responding strategically, is actually to exploit this gap between America and its allies, right? I think that one of the ways that Iran could misplay its hand here, and we're starting to see this from some of the Arab countries, is by being so indiscriminate in its attacks that people are forced back into the American camp, right? Whereas actually, if Iran can keep its attacks relatively strategically focused, this split between NATO and America, between Japan and America, is something that is deeply in Iran's interests.
And in terms of the neighbours of Iran, are we going to get to a point where we might see retaliation because they're being hit, albeit for having American bases or being allies of America, but their people are being hit?
Absolutely, and I think that's going to be a very interesting thing to play out. I mean, I was looking at a very senior sort of commentator, Qatari, who is normally very measured, and he was on social media today asking the question, obviously, to his fellow, commentariat and followers who are Qatari, saying, should the point come where should we be starting to retaliate against Iran? And another question he posed was, when this is done, should Iran be held financially responsible for the damage that it has done to its neighbours? So I think those conversations are starting to be had amongst those neighbouring countries.
And John, do you think we're going to see more detail about appropriate measures of offensive help from the UK? some more detail.
I think we may well do in the days ahead, once they've decided what to do. I mean, today's Cobra meeting wasn't really about the international side of it. It was more about the impact on petrol prices and everything else here. But certainly, I think once those military planners have had their talks with the Americans, and once the Prime Minister has had more talks, I mean, he spoke to Macron and Merz on the phone this morning. Clearly, it's not agreed yet. I mean, I think they're probably a bit taken aback by the severity of those attacks on all the energy and oil and gas installations. And it really has become an economic war now. I mean, that is the real fear of politicians throughout Europe and certainly in the UK. The Prime Minister keeps talking about the national interest, the cost of living and so on, but the cost of living is going to take a real hit.
This morning, gas went up by 25%.
Yeah.
You know, the Bank of England held interest rates today. It was hoping that they could cut twice. People are thinking interest rates might now go back up. So I think the government, remember, the Prime Minister at the beginning of the year was saying, we're going to turn a corner this year. The cost of living is my #1 priority. Inflation's coming down. Interest rates are coming down. Your bills are coming down.
That was before. And we've had Iran promising to take oil to above $200 a barrel. We can do that, they say, if you continue to attack us. We can take a break. When we come back, we'll take a first look at what's making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers. Do stay with us if you can.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
You are watching The Wrap. Time now to see what's making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers, dominated again by the war. The Guardian quotes warnings from Iran that it'll show zero restraint if its energy infrastructure is targeted again after Israel hit its gas fields. The Financial Times focuses on the growing economic fallout, writing that investors are pricing in a prolonged energy shock. The Telegraph looks at potential Saudi retaliation for Iranian attacks on its oil facilities. To the Express, which splashes forecasts of rising inflation here in the UK. While the I newspaper reports that bill rises are set to last for years. Similar focus for The Sun, its headline, Hell's Bills. And the Mail says it's not just energy and food. Millions can expect higher mortgages. Away from Iran, the Mirror leads with the UK COVID inquiry verdict. Its headline, Frontline Health Workers Saved Us and the NHS. And Tina Returner, says the Metro, writing that the late superstar is to return to the stage virtually. Well, Henry and Aisha, to take us through the papers now. We're going to start with Iran and obviously our lead story, front page of the Telegraph, and bringing in that line that we were previously discussing about Iran's neighbours potentially hitting back. This instance, they're talking about Saudi Arabia. Henry.
Yeah, Saudi Arabia, obviously the biggest, the dominant member of the Gulf Cooperation Council, which is that alliance of nearly all of the Gulf monarchies, I think, except Qatar. And it is facing exactly the dilemma that we were talking about a few minutes ago, which is that Iran has, since the American attack, lashed out at all of its neighbours. So far, those countries have just been defending themselves, but stocks of interceptors, which are the anti-missile, are running low, which means that the cost to those countries, both to their civilians and to their infrastructure, is starting to mount. And so what the Saudis are saying, and what we've been hearing from some other Middle Eastern countries as well, is if are they going to actually have to start hitting back? And I think that could be a very sort of dangerous moment for Iran, because currently, as we've been discussing, America very, very isolated and out on a limb, most of its allies feeling alienated, not getting involved. But if the Saudis and other Arab countries decide that actually Iran has forced them into a position where they have to retaliate, that is suddenly an awful lot more immediate military threat on Iran's borders and welcome allies for an isolated America.
And this is what Iran predicted or promised, should it be hit, a regional war. And this is exactly what will happen.
And I think Iran is OK with that, because I think they have figured out that, yeah, of course, they're getting terribly hit by all of this. But in terms of destabilising, they're quite strategic. They understand that the big prize for them is to destabilise not just a couple of economies, but kind of a huge number of economies. They are strategic enough to understand the huge impact. And we can see that sort of already. You know, today, Andrew Bailey, and it's further down in this piece, the Bank of England's governor has said that, you know, food prices are probably going to go up very soon. There's not going to be any interest rates on the horizon now. Inflation is set to rise from 2% to 3.5%. Meanwhile, in America, you know, oil is now potentially going up to $116 a barrel. All of this, the Iranians know that this is going to filter, this is going to move away from just the White House and all the, you know, the heat of all the diplomacy and the news reporting. This is going to hit ordinary people. There's midterms coming up in America. You know, all of this stuff, the Iranians, I think, are being quite calculating on.
Yeah, we move to the FT, and they're talking about the markets, as you say, tumbling as oil prices leap. The Stocks Europe 600 and London's FTSE 100 both dropped 2.4%, while the US's S&P 500 fell 0.8%. Markets are starting to price in a protracted energy shock. That's the prediction there from specialists.
Yeah, and I think that this is sort of the first indicator we have that an energy shock is an everything shock, right? Because of the impact on the economy. If you think about, obviously, there's the fuel in your car, there's heating your home, there's transportation, anything that needs to be moved from A to B also needs energy. And so actually there are very few sections of any of the economy that aren't going to be hit by this. And we saw in the latter half of the 20th century that oil embargoes had transformative effects, but those were at least sort of controlled, right? You had governments, they weren't at war, they were simply making decisions about who to exempt, who to embargo. Here, because it's a war situation, there's no control over it at all, and actually it could be something that runs completely out of control.
And the longer the war goes on for, the higher, inflation is set to rise. David Rees, head of global economics at Schroders, saying the current levels of oil and gas prices are already enough to add around 1% to headline inflation in the coming months, while shortages of fertilisers could push food inflation higher later this year as well.
Absolutely. I mean, inflation is the enemy of all of us. And, successive governments have been working really, really hard to get inflation down after that massive shock after the Ukraine invasion. And I think there's the geopolitics, which we've all been discussing, and then there is how ordinary citizens here, America, in other economies are going to feel. And so many people right now feel that they have not had a break in such a long time. Since the global financial crisis, Brexit, whatever you think about that, the COVID, the Ukraine crisis, the inflation crisis, people are financially burnt out and exhausted. There's a lot of people and businesses as well who probably can't take another huge spike in, as Henry said, energy bills. I think we are going to see some pretty profound and pretty devastating consequences for all of us as a result of this.
And the big M word being launched by the male mortgages could be affected as well.
Yeah, absolutely, because what's the Bank of England's mechanism for cracking down on inflation is interest rates. Who does that immediately hurt? People with mortgages. Now, I think that it's actually an interesting question because far fewer people sort of have the mortgages than they used to because they're so much less accessible, actually. Interest rates, therefore, have less of an impact on inflation, and it's a problem that the Bank of England has, is that it has fewer levers to pull. But that's no comfort at all if you're someone who has a mortgage, right, and you're already facing a cost of living crisis, right, and everything else, and all of a sudden this can be a really substantial a hike in interest rates for a family with a mortgage or a household with a mortgage. That's a really serious immediate jump in their outgoings.
But I'm actually in the unenviable position of remortgaging right now. And last week it was absolutely extraordinary where, I mean, it felt like it was kind of mini budget territory. My mortgage advisor was saying, try and lock something down because already the prices are shooting up, and my mortgage has gone up by 3 times now as a result of this, and that's an immediate hit. No one's going to get the tiny violins out for me, but there, as Henry said, there's lots of people, and it's that's going to have a massive effect on the rest of the economy as well, in terms of being able to spend money. Their heating bills are going down. I was speaking to some local businesses, and they were saying, look, people are already cancelling, for example, work they were going to get done to their house this week because people are, I better be careful with my money because who knows what might happen. This is going to have the whole shock of this through all the different supply chains in the economy, through all the different interconnected bits. It's going to have a huge, huge effect.
Donald Trump, meanwhile, telling us that it will be a blip, that everything will return to normal as soon as this is all over, which is imminent, he says. Let's change tact and have a look at a completely different story. Front page of The Guardian. Nigel Farage criticised over call to ban public Muslim prayer. Henry, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, what is there to say about it, really? I mean, he's targeting large-scale public prayer by Muslims, and for people who aren't familiar with it, it might be upsetting, but fundamentally it's prayer. I believe in religious freedom in this country. I think that there's no harm at all. No one has ever killed anybody by praying, right? And we accept in this country that people of all religious persuasions have the right to express their religious views in public. We defend the right to wear most religious dress. This is absurd. You can see why he's doing it because of the section of the vote that he's targeting, but I think that it is a deeply unfortunate and divisive call.
Aisha, what do you think?
Well, I am a Muslim, and happy Eid to everybody. It's actually Eid Mubarak to everybody. But I'm not here to dominate and take over. I'm not here to do some kind of massive invasion of the show. But yeah, I mean, I'm really glad, Henry. Thank you for saying what you did. And I think for a lot of just ordinary Muslim people, it feels really tough at the moment. You are told all the time that you're an Islamist or you're about to do something terrible, or we're fundamentally sort of bad people. And Farage obviously stokes up. Nick Timothy from Kemi Badenoch's side has all been really stirring it up as well. And I think it's just such a shame.
Well, Kemi Badenoch, just to bring you in on the Conservative approach, she questioned whether events fitted within the norms of British culture, i.e., massive prayer congregations. The growing tide of hate after the Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch, questioned whether the events fitted within the norms of British culture.
But I think she's deliberately trying to be divisive. I mean, I'm not massively religious person. I'm a Muslim. I'm not massively culturally Muslim. But wouldn't it be a sad place if we said, right, Jewish people are not allowed to sort of practice their faith in case it makes people feel uncomfortable, or Sikh people or Hindu people or whatever. And I mean, I went to an iftar in Parliament a couple of weeks ago, and it was absolutely brilliant to see people there from all across politics. Nuzgani. Iftar is a sort of breaking fast, and it's, part of, Ramadan and all of that kind of thing. And it was great to see politicians who were sort of Muslim from all different, Nuzgani, who's a Conservative, she's the deputy leader of the House. There was Naz Shah there from the Labour Party. And you kind of think, this is great. In the same way we'd celebrate Hanukkah and we would mark all of these different things. Look, and I say this as a Muslim person, of course we should be having a really serious conversation about integration and social cohesion. And there are issues, and I've never shied away from that. I've never been somebody to shy away from difficult issues like the Asian grooming gangs and all of that kind of thing. But there are so many people right now, you've got a choice. You can either try and have a functional society, or you can constantly try and divide and sort of stir the pot. And right now, Muslims are like the easy target, and shame on. I mean, Nigel Farage are used to it, but shame on people like Nick Timothy, and the Conservatives should actually know better than that.
Aisha, thank you very much for that. We must leave it there. Let's have a look at meningitis, another story that's been headlining today. There's been another rise in the number of meningitis cases in Kent. 27 are now confirmed. A mass vaccination programme has been expanded, with university students queuing for hours. But more than 100 were turned away because demand was too high. Here's our science editor, Tom Clark.
Within a few hours, the queue was round the block. After the Health Secretary visiting Kent University's campus-turned-clinic announced they'd be widening the meningitis B vaccine safety net.
We are now encouraging anyone who attended club chemistry from the 5th of March until it voluntarily closed to come forward for both antibiotics and vaccination. Furthermore, we're expanding vaccination to anyone who's previously been offered the prophylactic antibiotic. All of those things taken together mean that the risks, even for students here in Canterbury, are relatively low, and of course to the general public across the country who are also watching events with interest and concern, the risk to the general public is extremely low.
People are clearly anxious. The meningitis B jab these young people and students didn't get as teenagers will give them long-term protection, but it takes 2 doses a month apart to get full immunity. So what staff here are telling them as soon as they're done with this, if they hadn't done so already, is to go and get a dose of antibiotics as well. A single dose is enough to eliminate the bug causing meningitis B, preventing illness and the risk of spread. They've doled out 8,500 doses since Monday, most of them from this one pop-up clinic. As well as preventing new cases, it's boosting morale.
Everybody wanted to go home, so yeah, it was definitely a scare. And then I think when Monday rolled around and the university kind of, got to grips with what was going on and, the advice to give, it was definitely a lot more, the mood calmed down.
Meningitis B has an incubation period of up to 10 days, so health officials warn new cases are likely to emerge. Why was this outbreak so large, and could it spread further? Both questions they're urgently trying to address.
We're looking very closely at whether there's something particular about, about the club setting or about this environment that has led the bacteria to transmit more effectively. The other possibility is that the bacteria itself may have evolved and changed to be more transmissible. And as you can imagine, we're working very intensely on that. We have sent samples for DNA sequencing, whole genome sequencing, and that will be completed very soon.
They're looking too at whether this generation of young people may be more susceptible to MNB due to less social mixing in their teenage years during COVID. If that's ruled out, this outbreak, though large, sudden and lethal, may turn out to have just been very bad luck. Tom Clark, Sky News.
Henry, extremely worrying that the cases have gone up from 20 to 27. What's more worrying is that the centres administering the vaccinations, they're at full capacity, having to turn students away.
Yeah, I mean, it's so shortly after, the pandemic, it feels deeply unfortunate to be back again talking about having been caught unprepared and not having the infrastructure and all the rest of it. I think this is really a testament to the importance of having a comprehensive vaccination programme, right? Because actually, it makes sense for monetary reasons at a certain time that you stop inoculating people against certain things when they're young, but it does open up vulnerabilities like this.
Aisha.
I mean, I think it's just going to be very interesting to see how this goes, because there's a big debate right now. Should there be a sort of national rollout of some kind of mass immunisation thing now? And I think the opinions are quite sort of divided on this in terms of is that the right thing to do? It's not something which is quite as contagious as COVID was. There is also, how there's practical public health things that can be looked at as well. But I do wonder if there will be a point where more people, like other universities or colleges, do want to do more vaccinating. But I wonder as well, in a post-COVID, a lot of people are more vaccine kind of hesitant now, which really worries me about when something like this, comes up. I mean, actually, in Kent County Council, the lady who runs that now, who's a Reform person, has expressed views of being quite sceptical about, post the COVID vaccine. And I think we have to have a world where if these things spread up and it is deemed necessary to get vaccinated, people do get vaccinated.
Well, with the Chief Scientific Officer saying it's very difficult to know where numbers might go from here, you can see that people are quite keen to be vaccinated now with those queues snaking around the vaccination centres. We're going to take a break. When we come back, live from London, it's Saturday night. We'll look at the British version of an American comedy institution, SNL.
I'm James Matthews, and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. James Matthews from Sky News. Can I ask, why was Gillian Maxwell invited to your daughter Chelsea Clinton's wedding in 2010? Maria, did you offer to President Trump your Nobel Peace Prize?
I presented the President of the United States the medal.
Free, wherever you get your news.
Bang, bang. You can hear it hitting the windows.
Our houses are okay.
As bad as all of this is, it could have been much worse. Today, this land they call sacred is at the heart of America's electric car revolution.
To me, it's a sacred ground.
David Cameron says that you should vote through funding for Ukraine. What do you say to that?
I really don't care what David Cameron has to say.
Did you stay at the apartment of Jeffrey Epstein?
I'm not answering any questions about him.
I've covered some of the biggest stories in the world. Mr. Patel, did you endanger public safety when you said the killer was in custody? Mr. Hexter, does your past behaviour make you unfit to serve?
Escort coming out!
San Quentin houses America's largest death row. They rarely allow cameras onto the condemned block.
James Matthews, Sky News. It's one step closer to getting out, to getting off death row.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Mr. Trump, James Matthews from Sky News.
Hey, James.
Mr. Musk, has your ignorance and ego cost Ukrainian lives? Vladimir Putin calls you outstanding. What do you call him, sir? James Matthews from Sky News, Mr. Mamdani.
I have to be honest, when you said you were from Sky News, I just got very excited. Could you repeat the question one more time?
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Welcome to the world.
Come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? This is the war game.
There were a number of armed security.
We want to discover, to find out what's really going on.
Everything you need to know about British politics in about 20 minutes. I actually don't like political drama.
So, where next?
Available wherever you get your podcasts.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you.
So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Rich and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
Live from London, it is The Wrap. Taste and tone in comedy are often cited as being amongst cultural differences between Britain and America. So it'll be interesting to see how a local version of late-night US sketch show Saturday Night Live resonates when it launches this weekend. SNL stalwart Tina Fey will host the first episode. Here's a flavour of what's to come.
Tina, we love that you're here, but we're just trying to figure out how to promote the show.
Oh, no, of course. Why do you think I brought this?
I'm Tina Fey, and I'm hosting SNL UK this week. Why? Because I thought it would get me dual citizenship. It did not.
Is that why you asked us all to marry you?
Funny?
It's an isolation. That's part of a sketch, right? I think the interesting thing about this is one, America does have different humour to Britain. So what's the writing team like? And I think the other thing that's going to be interesting for this is that, like, SNL is an institution, right? It started off, I think, in the 70s, and that means that it came up through the era when everyone watched 5 TV channels, right? And so it got to build that brand and that association when you had water cooler television. And I think any show starting now is just in a completely different environment. Audiences are much more segmented than they used to be. Any show that touches on politics is also a lot more divisive than it used to be.
Apart from The Wrap, obviously.
But, you know, if you're a political show, this has been a problem for SNL in America, right? A lot of comedians used to have Republican and Democrat audiences, and it used to be a sort of meeting point, and now it very much isn't. So how they navigate that will be very interesting.
What do you think? How do you think this will go down?
I'm very excited
audiences?
about this because in a former world, I was a stand-up comedian, and I actually know some of my old stand-up friends are involved in the writing of this. Right. They're part of the writing room. So in the comedy world, there's quite a buzz about this. And I think people... And listen, well done to Sky for doing this, because I think we are missing a good satirical TV show in the UK, and there's been many attempts. There was the MASH report, you know, Mock the Week. We don't have as much comedy as we used to have sort of live at the Apollo. I mean,
well, the classic used to be Spitting Image.
I mean, that was so everybody remembers the vegetable sketch and all that kind of thing. But I think to do it well, the reason why Saturday Night Live works, and Henry is right, because it's a total institution there. They throw a lot of money at it as well. Sky, if you're watching, keep throwing the money at this. The writing room is everything, right? You need to have really great calibre writers who are just grinding out great material. Like, the gag rate has to be really, really high. I think the other thing is, you have to, if you're going to do political comedy, particularly in this country, it's got to be really sharp, and it's got to be without fear or favour. You cannot, particularly I'd say in Britain right now, have any accusations of being too biased, particularly to the left. You want to be skewering everybody mercilessly, whether it's Keir Starmer, whether it's Nigel Farage, whether it's Kemi Badenoch, whatever it is. And I think that's something which has been quite tricky to get right in British comedy, because there's been a bit of a bias towards the left. And so I'm excited to see it. I hope it does well. Because I think we need it. I think we're really missing that in our kind of, you know, cultural fabric.
Do you think our politicians can stand up to the scrutiny and the political satire? Are they able to have the mickey taken out of them?
I mean, I think there, actually, we probably do have an advantage over the Americans, because I think in Britain America still has this sort of slightly august Republican conception of a lot of its politicians, whereas in Britain, this is the country that produced Spitting Image. I'm sorry, it's not going to be more savage than Spitting Image was, with the best will in the world, because there, beyond the jokes, you also just had to see what sort of monstrous puppet they made out of you before they even did anything else. So I think that would be absolutely fine. I think Aisha's correct. Ideally, a big budget show like this, lots of potential, but you want it to be somewhere where people can come and actually from across the aisle, as they would say in America, come and watch it. And there used to be a rule in The Simpsons back in its golden era, which was that they always had a Republican in the writers' room. Maybe only one, but they always made sure they had one because it meant that the jokes cut both ways. And I think that Aisha's right. If they can do that, that will be a critical test, because otherwise, if they avoid politics, that might be fine. But if you're doing political humour and you're only sort of mocking one side, I think it gets called clapter, where really people just agree with you.
It's like when you're doing stand-up, right? If you want to get a cheap laugh, just go Liz Truss, right? And everyone, that just brings the house down. But you kind of know that was like a cheap gag in a way. That's like an easy sort of hit. What's more, like for somebody like me, what's a better joke is if I attack someone on my own side. Like if I'm going to attack someone in the Labour Party, I'll get a better laugh if I do a joke about Keir Starmer or Jeremy Corbyn, not a cheap gag about Liz Truss. But to be fair to Saturday Night Live in America, they can still deliver. If anyone here wants to watch one of the best sketches in recent living memory, go and watch the Saturday Night Live sketch of the Zelensky-Trump showdown. Oh, that is utter gold. Utter gold. Still got it.
Aisha and Henry, thank you so much for taking us through it. The papers, much more at 11.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report. And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
Tonight on The Wrap, the US and Iran stand firm. As fears of a full-blown energy crisis persist, Donald Trump says his military operation is ahead of schedule, and Benjamin Netanyahu claims Iran is weaker than ever.
I thought it would be worse, much worse, actually. I thought there was a chance it could be much worse. It's not bad, and it's going to be over with pretty soon.
We are winning, and Iran is being decimated. Iran's missile and drone arsenal is being massively degraded and will be destroyed.
The Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson tells our international affairs editor his country cannot be expected to show restraint until the US and Israel stop their military campaign.
Do you think it would be really realistic to offer olive branch to those who want to behead you?
More students in Kent are offered the meningitis B vaccine as the number of cases linked to the outbreak rises. The vaccination centre at the university is forced to close early due to lack of capacity. The COVID inquiry says the NHS came close to collapse during the pandemic. The impact on patients and healthcare workers is laid bare, with millions of non-urgent operations cancelled. We'll discuss the day's biggest stories with Labour peer and broadcaster Baroness Aisha Hazarika and journalist and commentator Henry Hill. Plus, a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers, including predictions that rising bills will be with us for years. Good evening. Now, as oil and gas prices continue to rise, fighting talk from all sides in the Iran war, with Donald Trump emphasising it was his Israeli counterpart who decided to bomb Iran's oil fields. Benjamin Netanyahu confirmed that tonight, but denied he pushed the US president to go to war. Was the US president forced to go to war by Netanyahu?
Well, we don't. It's Donald Trump. We've got no idea. I mean, on paper, it's absurd, right? Because America is by far the larger partner in that alliance. It seems very tricky to see how Netanyahu could force Donald Trump. I don't know if at the end of the day, even Netanyahu would launch this if Donald Trump had told him firmly that America wouldn't go in. What I can believe is that Donald Trump was presented with, or managed to talk himself into, a portrait of a war with Iran, which bore very little resemblance to reality, which could be done and dusted in a couple of weeks.
Aisha?
I mean, I probably agree with quite a lot of that. I mean, Donald Trump right now is just such an unreliable narrator in terms of what has happened and what is going to happen. You know, first of all, he went to war, he'd won it immediately, he didn't need any of our help, we're all useless, bad people. Then he's like, actually, I do need your help, can you send ships? Now he's like, I don't need... I mean, it's all over the place. I mean, he is completely unhinged on this and clearly very, very unprepared, because if you were going to launch a really big decisive strike against Iran, what you would have done is you had got your ducks in a row so you could have got stuff sorted for the Strait of Hormuz. What you wouldn't have done is gone full in and gone, oh, there's this bit of, like, water which is really important for, like, oil. I'm sorry, really all over the place.
Should we see what the president had to say himself? He says he doesn't intend to have US troops on the ground in Iran, and his operation is ahead of schedule. Take a listen to what he had to say.
Iran is a serious threat to the world, to the Middle East and to the world. And everybody agrees with me. I think virtually every country agrees with me on that. So I wanted to put out that fire. And I said, you know, if I do that, oil prices will go up, the economy will go down a little bit. I thought it would be worse, much worse, actually. I thought there was a chance it could be much worse. It's not bad, and it's going to be over with pretty soon.
Have you talked to Prime Minister Netanyahu about attacking the oil and gas fields?
Yeah, I did. I told him, don't do that, and he won't do that. We didn't discuss. You know, we do, we're independent, we get along great. It's coordinated, but on occasion he'll do something, and if I don't like it, and so we're not doing that anymore.
Fact number one, Israel acted alone against the Slawiya gas compound. Fact number two, President Trump asked us to hold off on future attacks, and we're holding out. What do we see? What happens if are there any signs that the Iranian regime is cracking? A lot of signs. A lot of signs. I wish I could divulge all of them. We are winning, and Iran is being decimated. Iran's missile and drone arsenal is being massively degraded and will be destroyed.
Well, certainly on agreement with President Trump as to whether they're winning this war and the fact that Iran's capabilities have been decimated.
But it's sort of asymmetric, because their argument that Iran's stuff has been decimated, that might well be true. That doesn't mean that this war is won, because Iran is just a completely different regime. Iran has got just a completely different way of operating. It's a brutal regime. It doesn't, operate to the same norms as us. And I keep going back to the Strait of Hormuz. It has literally got the world by the because this is where 20% of the world's oil goes through. It's now, trying to escalate this regional war in terms of it knows that the way to kind of bring down a lot of Western countries, who Iran hates, and it makes no secret of that, is through economics and through energy.
But it doesn't hate its neighbours, or it hasn't seemingly in the past, but it's attacking its neighbours.
It hates Israel.
Well, I was meaning the rest of the Middle East in terms of, UAE, Qatar.
Historical Sunni-Shia tensions, obviously, which manifested in the Iran-Iraq war for a while. But the Gulf Cooperation Council, which is the alliance, the Saudi-led alliance of Arab monarchies in the Arabian Peninsula, they were formed basically as a kind of counterweight to Iran. Iran is a regional threat with geopolitical as well as religious interests. But I think that the real challenge for Donald Trump here is that this is the top of the escalation pyramid for the West, right? This has always been the thing that nobody really thought we'd do, but which you had in the back pocket if Iran really didn't play ball. You've now done it, right? Which means that actually, if you back out now and the Iranian regime survives, its credibility and its confidence will be enormously enhanced. Because what are you going to do? Right? You went in and failed. So I think America is maybe boxing itself into a position. It's all very well saying we're not going to put troops on the ground and all the rest of it, but you also can't back out. If you think Iran is this dangerous, you can't afford to embolden it like this.
No, that's a very true point. But we know that Donald Trump is looking for an off-ramp, isn't he? I mean, he's already saying that he knows when it will be over, he'll feel it in his bones, and it's coming to a conclusion.
But you just cannot trust a word that Donald Trump says. You just can't. And I think that on the one hand, he wants this to be over, but does he? I mean, I don't really think he has thought this. I think he'll have a lot of money men, and he'll have a lot of his strategists saying this is an absolute nightmare. You've got kind of energy costs going up in America. You've got a huge affordability crisis in America. You've got midterms coming up. His popularity is sinking. So they will be saying to him, right, find an off-ramp. But this is somebody who's incredibly capricious. And I think what Iran is very good at doing is pressing his buttons. And, it's in Iran's interest, in a way, to kind of prolong this for pain in terms of Western economies and what it might do to Donald Trump in the long term. And even though we all want this to stop and everybody needs this to de-escalate as soon as possible in terms of getting our economies back on track, Iran knows that is the thing that is going to really cause pain to a lot of countries that it hates. So Donald Trump may say, this may be over, but I don't know if Iran is going to stop. And by the way, we haven't even put into the mix Iran being a horrible, evil, nasty regime. Are they going to do a terrorist attack at some point to kind of just keep the ante going, to keep this thing going? I don't think we're anywhere near the end of this. I mean, I hope we are, but sadly, I don't think we are.
And as you say, the effects being felt across the world, not least in the UK, and we see the headline on the newspaper, shock hits UK bills set to rise and to last for years, quite depressingly. Well, let's hear now from Tehran, where a senior Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson official has told our international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn, that the regime is not ready to negotiate.
You cannot expect a country that is under military aggression to exercise restraint. You have to direct your call to those aggressors. They started this aggression. They have to stop.
It sounds, though, to people listening, therefore, that Iran is prepared to escalate at whatever the cost. And we've heard from your colleagues saying this is not the time for diplomacy. This is the time to defend Iran. But I think people listening are desperate to hear there's some kind of progress. Is there any kind of olive branch you can offer to your enemies to say, there is something you can talk about, a way out of this crisis before it engulfs the whole region and possibly further beyond?
Do you think it would be really realistic to offer olive branch to those who want to behead you? They are killing our elites. They are targeting our leaders. So we are facing a combination of acts of terrorism and acts of aggression and terrorism. And this is unprecedented. So this killing spree has to stop. They have killed so many people across Iran. So you cannot expect the country that is defending itself against this barbaric act of aggression to show olive branch to those who knows no boundary in targeting your country.
We're hearing from the Americans the possibility, growing talk of boots on the ground, of some kind of invasion. And the American president is asking for billions of dollars from the US Congress to continue this campaign. Do you think we're getting closer to that moment where American boots are put on the ground in Iran? And is your country preparing for that possibility?
I'm sure our armed forces are prepared for every scenario. You see what happened the first day.
Including invasion?
You see, we do not welcome invasion, we do not welcome war, but we have shown that we are prepared for every scenario, because this is our homeland. This is our homeland, and we are patriotic people. We know that they are not right. We are rightful defender of Iran. So we don't care what it takes for us to defend our homeland with all we have.
What kind of reception, though, can American troops expect if they are to invade Iran?
I'm sure many people are waiting for them.
So the Iranian regime saying there that they're not ready to negotiate. We must remember that when they were hit in June, they were in the midst of negotiations. Likewise, this time round, they're in the midst of negotiations. So it's no wonder that they don't want to go back to the negotiating table.
And it's really interesting because just in the last few days, Tulsi Gabbard, who's a very senior person in Donald Trump's administration, was in front of a committee in America, and she admitted that actually the negotiations were going OK and that there was no evidence to suggest from an intelligence point of view that Iran were ready to do this big nuclear strike, which is the kind of raison d'etre that Donald Trump gave. Now, I think we all, and Henry made this point earlier, I think we have to be, like, realistic. I mean, let's not take Iran at its word. I mean, Iran is a thoroughly bad people who lie all the time and do terribly sort of bad things. So let's not make them the kind of honest broker in all of this. But what is absolutely true, and I go back, for me, everything is about the Strait of Hormuz and it's about the economic consequences. So that is the leverage that Iran has. And Iran is not going to come to the negotiating table and give anything until it sees all of us in much more pain and until they get them. A lot of this, right, is about Donald Trump and face. Donald Trump wants to look like the big I am. He wants to look like he's in command of the situation. And Iran wants to see him go through pain. They want to see him sort of cleave off from some of his allies. They want to see him come under pressure from his own citizens. So they are not going to come to the table. They are not going to give up any release on the chokehold on the Strait of Hormuz. They're going to keep bombing oil refineries and energy plants in the Gulf until they see that he's in more pain, I'm afraid.
Henry, how is this going to end? Because Donald Trump is going to want to be able to say that he's won this war. And as Aisha was saying, Iran are going to want to see him have gone through some pain before we get to that point. And actually, will they even want to get to a point where he's able to declare that he's won the war?
I mean, I wish I knew. I'd be making so much money on the stock markets. This is the problem with this, is that once you start something like this, it's very easy before you start a war to be like, well, it'll be a limited operation, it'll last X number of weeks, over by Christmas or whatever it is. And then they start, and wars being big and complicated and horrible, they tend to just run away from you, right? On the Iranian side, the Iranian regime hasn't immediately collapsed. It might be possible to subject it to so much pressure that it does at some point, but for now it's digging in, it's got a very distributed, drones are incredibly easy, it's not like classical military infrastructure, it's quite easy to hit. You can hide drones almost anywhere. On the other hand, America has played its biggest card, right? If America backs out of this and is seen to be defeated by the Iranian regime will have no incentive to conduct nuclear negotiations or indeed any other sort of negotiation ever again. And so America risks being sucked into it. At the same time...
Well, it simply can't back out.
Exactly, it can't back out. And he's already talking about, you know, we're not going to have troops on the ground. Maybe he's going to try and dragoon some of his Arab allies into providing some of those troops. We were hearing the Saudis maybe saying that they might have to retaliate. This could get an awful lot bigger. And I think you were talking about the lack of planning. If you were really going to do something like this, you'd have massively stocked up on your oil beforehand, right? You would have maybe paid for the Saudis to build another pipeline. They have one pipeline that goes to the Red Sea, which isn't vulnerable to Strait of Hormuz. They should probably have about 5 if you're going to do this. But the other thing to remember is thinking about the West's other strategic objectives. What was the main reason we were trying to drive down oil costs? Because they're propping up Putin's war machine. Yeah. Putin's war machine depends on oil exports. Already because of this, Trump has been negotiating with Russia about lifting those embargoes. Yeah. This is helping the Russian war machine crush Ukraine, meaning all of the sacrifices the Ukrainians have made, all the assistance that America and Europe has given to Ukraine is just being wiped out by the second-order consequences of this move.
Such an important
this is escalating by the day, isn't it? Let's move on to a domestic story, equally important. That's the rise in the number of meningitis cases in Kent. 27 are now confirmed. A mass vaccination programme has been expanded with university students queuing for hours, but more than 100 were turned away because demand was too high. Here's our science editor, Tom Clark.
Within a few hours, the queue was round the block. After the Health Secretary visiting Kent University's campus-turned-clinic announced they'd be widening the meningitis B vaccine safety net.
We are now encouraging anyone who attended club chemistry from the 5th of March until it voluntarily closed to come forward for both antibiotics and vaccination. Furthermore, we're expanding vaccination to anyone who's previously been offered the prophylactic antibiotic. All of those things taken together mean that the risks, even for students here in Canterbury, are relatively low, and of course to the general public across the country who are also watching events with interest and concern, the risk to the general public is extremely low.
People are clearly anxious. The meningitis B jab these young people and students didn't get as teenagers will give them long-term protection, but it takes 2 doses a month apart to get full immunity. So what staff here are telling them as soon as they're done with this, if they hadn't done so already, is to go and get a dose of antibiotics as well.
A single dose is enough to eliminate the bug causing meningitis B, preventing illness and the risk of spread. They've doled out 8,500 doses since Monday, most of them from this one pop-up clinic. As well as preventing new cases, it's boosting morale.
Everybody wanted to go home, so yeah, it was definitely a scare. And then I think when Monday rolled around and the university kind of, got to grips with what was going on and, the advice to give, it was definitely a lot more, the mood calmed down.
Meningitis B has an incubation period of up to 10 days, so health officials warn new cases are likely to emerge. Why was this outbreak so large and could it spread further? Both questions they're urgently trying to address.
We're looking very closely at whether there's something particular about, about the club setting or about this environment that has led the bacteria to transmit more effectively. The other possibility is that the bacteria itself may have evolved and changed to be more transmissible. And as you can imagine, we're working very intensely on that. We have sent samples for DNA sequencing, whole genome sequencing, and that will be completed very soon.
They're looking too at whether this generation of young people may be more susceptible to MenB due to less social mixing in their teenage years during COVID. If that's ruled out, this outbreak, though large, sudden and lethal, may turn out to have just been very bad luck. Tom Clark, Sky News.
Still extremely worrying, this story, when we've got the Chief Scientific Officer, Professor Robin May, saying it's very difficult to know where numbers might go from here, that the death toll's risen from 20 to 27.
Yeah, so obviously the 2 elements of this, I suppose, are, number one, the immediate trying to contain it, right? Track and trace who has it, get the vaccinations out, but then it's assuming that it might break containment, working out what sections of the population are vulnerable. Because due to the way that inoculations and vaccinations work, people above a certain age might have had it, and then people below a certain age might have had it, but people in the middle would have been in an era when they weren't giving this inoculation, and so they're more vulnerable. You need to identify those people and target them. Combating diseases, as we discovered a few years ago, is incredibly complicated, and it's made more complicated by the fact that, of course, every disease is different, right? And you can't simply take the playbook that you used for one and apply it straight to another one. But we simply have to wish them the best.
Yeah, I said cases have risen from 20 to 27, just to correct myself there. But we've seen at the facilities where they are administering the vaccination, that queues snaking around the building and them simply running out of capacity and having to turn students away.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, there's part of me that's sort of heartened by that, because I have been anxious that post-COVID maybe there might be a bit more vaccine hesitancy. So I think it is good that people are obviously open to that. Although this is different, you know, this is a very different kind of thing to COVID. I think there was, you know, people sort of think you can do the same thing that you did in COVID, and this is very different. I mean, I was listening to an expert this morning, and one of the really important things they were saying is, look, with meningitis, if you catch it early and you take the treatment early, it can stop it becoming a very life-threatening, difficult thing. So it's really important that everyone familiarises themselves to go on the NHS website, look at what those early symptoms are, because I think right now we've all got to be vigilant. And this is actually post-COVID, probably the first big kind of public health story that we've had. So it is going to be interesting to see how not just the NHS, but the local council, the universities, and what other universities and colleges they'll be watching it around the country, thinking, right, should we be getting prepared for this maybe, you know, happening at one of our places?
And very important, as you say, people should familiarise themselves with the
symptoms, and if they see anything early, go and get medical help.
Absolutely. Let's take a break now. Coming up, damning findings, how the pandemic left the NHS teetering towards collapse. Stay with us.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics. I'm so sorry about what happened to you. So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Richard Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist. A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
A historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Hello again, you are watching The Wrap. The UK COVID inquiry has concluded that the NHS came close to collapse at the height of the pandemic. The inquiry chair, Baroness Hallett, also said some home slogans sent the message that healthcare was closed and doctors and nurses were put at exceptional risk by a lack of decent PPE.
The healthcare systems came close to collapse. Healthcare workers carried the burden of caring for the sick and dying in unprecedented numbers. It came at a huge cost to them, to their families, to their patients, and to the loved ones of patients. It also came at a huge cost to the non-COVID patients who were not seen and treated. Collapse was only narrowly avoided thanks to the extraordinary efforts of all those working in healthcare across the United Kingdom. However, despite those efforts, some patients did not get the level of care they would usually receive. Some people were not admitted to hospital when they should have been. Those taken to hospital in an ambulance often waited hours to be admitted, putting them and the ambulance crews at risk.
Collapse only narrowly avoided. Are you surprised by that?
No. I think the important thing to remember about the NHS is that structurally the NHS, one of the reasons it's so efficient is that it is run close to or at capacity at all times, right? There's not a lot of slack built into the NHS system.
One of the reasons it's so efficient.
Yeah, because the way that you have slack capacity is by being less efficient, right? You have empty beds, you have spare wards and so on, and you have all that kind of reserve stuff that you're not using. But what the NHS does is it takes all of its resources and it spends them when we run it fairly close to the wire all the time. That's why the NHS always has a winter crisis, because demand goes up and it puts pressure on a system that's running at close to capacity. So it is not surprising at all that a system running that way with an outside context problem like an actual pandemic would come under severe stress. Now, of course, there are questions about the way that the government handled that once it happened, specifically, as you've said, with regards to PPE and so on. But I would have been astonished, I think most people with any familiarity with the subject would be astonished if the NHS hadn't come under strain as a result of COVID.
So nothing surprising coming out of this report?
No, nothing surprising. But I think what is depressing is that, you know, when we went through this horrible, horrible shock, there was lots of solemn conversations saying we must learn the lessons of what's happened. And that is proving very, very difficult. I mean, Henry is right. This concept of resilience we had a big conversation post-pandemic about resilience running actually through all our public services, whether it was education, particularly through health. And we're not really having those serious conversations. And you look at how stretched the NHS is. You're right, it's not just the NHS, it's social care, which then creates these bed blocking and all of this kind of stuff. We clapped our staff, but we've got big issues with staff in the NHS, lots of people kind of leaving to go off to Australia. We've got issues about efficiency in the NHS. Also, one of the things in COVID was we had a big conversation about our lack of our general bad health levels. Why is it that other countries did a bit better than us? A lot of that was about our health, and there was a whole conversation. We've got to get healthy as a nation. We've got to do kind of more preventative. That has not really happened. And then just to link this back to the other stuff we've been talking about, the economy and the effects of this, we ideally need to do quite a lot of money going into various bits of the NHS, prevention, community care, adult social care. That ain't happening if our economy is going to constrict.
That reporting from the COVID inquiry will be in some of the papers, but let's take a look at the other front pages for you now. Well, The Guardian quotes warnings from Iran that it'll show zero restraint if its energy infrastructure is targeted again after Israel hit its gas fields. The Times reports on the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu comments that air attacks won't be enough to defeat Iran's regime. The Financial Times focuses on the growing economic fallout, writing that investors are pricing in a prolonged energy shock. The Telegraph looks at potential Saudi retaliation for Iranian attacks on its oil facilities. To The Express, which splashes forecasts of rising inflation here in the UK. While the newspaper reports that bill rises are set to last for years. Similar focus for The Sun, its headline, Hell's Bills. And the Mail says it's not just energy and food. Millions can expect higher mortgages. Away from Iran, and the Mirror leads with the UK COVID inquiry verdict. Its headline, Frontline Health Workers Saved Us and the NHS. And Tina Returner, says the Metro, writing that the late superstar is to return to the stage virtually. Henry and Aisha, take us into the papers. Henry, you start with the Times. Netanyahu saying that the regime won't be toppled from the air. That's the Iranian regime, which would presume that he's talking about ground forces.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking just a minute ago about escalation, and here we are. He's right, I think, in a very narrow sense, in that you can't win this kind of war from the air, right? It's actually hard to win most wars from the air. You can suppress things, but if you look at most of the time when NATO has gone in and provided air cover, for example, in Libya, it was providing air cover for local ground forces to go in and turf out the government. Now here, there are no local ground forces. And so, as we've seen, the Iranian regime, which has distributed strike capacity and drones and so on that it can launch from all kinds of places, is proving extremely resilient. Now, if the regime doesn't collapse soon, and the Americans don't want to back out, which would be a potentially catastrophic loss of face, they are going to come to the crunch point of, do we go in on land? What troops are going to do that? I presume that Netanyahu is volunteering, if he's suggesting this, but Israel can't do it on its own. Its land forces aren't that big. They're committed all over the place. Will America's Arab allies be asked to contribute? Will America? Will Trump ask us to go in? But yes, this is exactly what any sensible military planner would have warned Trump about before he tried to do his quick and easy one-week air war in the Strait of Hormuz, which is, do you have a plan for sending troops into Iran?
But again, today, we heard Donald Trump reiterating that he will not be sending ground troops into Iran any time.
You say that. Yesterday, just I think within 24 hours ago, there was a senior unnamed source from the White House briefing out that we absolutely have not taken off the table the option of boots on the ground. So I just think Donald Trump is not a trusted narrator on this. And Henry is right. You cannot get regime change through an air war campaign. It's very difficult to get successful regime change, even if you do put boots on the ground. Just look at our terrible misadventures in the Middle East, of which we have had many over the last 20 years. Even when we put boots on the ground, and we had boots on the ground for a long, long time, it hasn't exactly been a happy ending there. Look at Afghanistan. You know, Iraq has taken a long, long time. I mean, the idea that other allies would be rushing to be like, yeah, you just went and did this totally mad intervention. We'll get our boys and girls on the... And of course, that's just not... I mean, we need to be absolutely realistic about this.
But, Henry, do you think that Donald Trump has been buoyed by his success in Venezuela, where he did effect regime change of a sort, very simply, by going in, extracting the leader and replacing them, albeit with the deputy, but replacing the leader of the country?
Well, I think that's an important thing to note. One, that was just a kidnapping, but two... yeah, but the deputy of that government, right? I mean, it's potentially going to make a difference, but the socialist regime in Venezuela, dictatorial and horrible though it is not the same thing as the Islamic Republic. That's very different. I think if you look at examples of regime change which worked, not necessarily the most ethical way of doing things, look at the Cold War in the 20th century. What did America tend to do? It would tend to find people in the armed forces of a given country, and it would collaborate with them, and they would be the people who, one, provided the troops on the ground, and then, two, usually ended up providing the government afterwards. Now, in the 21st century, we have much lower tolerance for putting in a random general who starts executing all of his opponents the moment we leave, right? Which is why we ended up trying to do it the way that we did in Afghanistan and Iraq, which was spend vast amounts of money. So the question, I think, again, is if Trump goes in, is Trump or his allies, you know, the Kurdish Peshmerga, I think it's worth noting, have already started fighting in Iran, so it could be that he tries to do it with allied forces instead. But again, what's the plan? Because there could be a realistic but not terribly ethical plan, which is where you essentially find some Iranian general who is prepared to, you know, get crowned president of Iran and start doing the bloody work himself. But if you're going to go in and try and do an Afghanistan, right, you're going to try and go in and hose trillions of dollars at turning Iran into a 21st century Western democracy overnight. Like, that's
Only for it to fall back to the Taliban over a weekend
Exactly,
20 years
that's mad.
later.
And I think the important thing to remember is that Donald Trump and the Republican Party, he was not elected on this platform.
No.
He was an isolationist.
Quite the opposite.
Exactly.
Yeah.
His base
He didn't want to start any more forever wars. That's what he said to his base. Let's have a look at the implications on Iran's neighbours, because we read in the Telegraph that the Saudis are contemplating, it's saying threaten in the headline, but contemplating fighting back.
There's a real danger that this could tip into a really, really difficult regional war. And I don't, I think Iran probably wants to cause as much chaos as possible. But I think from the other Gulf states, they did not want to be going to war with Iran. But I think a point is going to come where they will start asking questions saying, should we retaliate? And, I said earlier, I saw a very interesting conversation online about saying, when this is over, should Iran be paying us some kind of compensation for all the damage? But I think another thing we have to factor in all of this, and again, a lot of this is about joining up the dots. It's not just something randomly happening in the Middle East. What are the implications here, right? Many people are very concerned about illegal immigration. Many people are very concerned about small boats. All of this is going to precipitate a humanitarian crisis. There's going to be a movement of people. What is the country in terms of the third highest people that come over in small boats? Iran. There is a potential for all of this regional war as well. It's not just a war in a faraway place. It's affecting us from an economic point of view. Our mortgages are all about to go up, our heating bills, businesses, all of that kind of thing. But also, this could affect movements of people as well, coming to Europe and coming to Britain.
Yeah, as you say, repercussions across the globe, not least economically, as oil prices leap through the roof. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll take a look at more of the top stories in tomorrow's newspapers. Do stay with us if you can.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report. Mr. Zuma, Sky News. We're trying to see as much as we can.
You are watching The Wrap, where we're taking you through tomorrow's newspapers. Still with us, Henry and Aisha. We're going to have a look at The Guardian front page and their headline there, New Threat from Iran as Fears Grow of Energy Crisis. And this energy crisis affects the entire globe, doesn't it?
It's so profound because, I mean, Henry said this earlier, and he's so right. Energy is at the heart of our entire living. It's at the beating heart of our lives and our economy. And if we are going to have this huge energy shock, it's going to affect us as citizens in terms of our bills, our mortgages, food prices. Inflation is the enemy of all of us. It's going to affect businesses. We're going to have less money to spend. It's going to be an absolute nightmare for businesses. If interest rates go up, the cost of government debt goes up. There's going to be squeezes on the economy. That means less government spending. We were meant to be spending more on defence. Good luck with that now, you know, plus all the other things we want to spend money on, education, health, you know, people want, you know, can we give some relief to students? You know, all of these pressures. I don't think we have quite computed yet the sort of really devastating consequences of just thinking about how the shock waves of this economic hit is going to affect us profoundly. This could affect us for a long time. And for so many people, they have not had a break since the global financial crisis. You know, so many countries are struggling. So many people around the country are struggling right now. Businesses, hospitality, all of that kind of thing. We're going to be in for a really, really tough time.
And Henry, this is at, only day 20 of this war. The Sun headline, Hell's Bills, and just talking about how exactly this is going to affect people in this country.
Yeah, so essentially saying that energy bills could rise by up to as much as £300, right? Which is,
wow.
Yeah, exactly. Think about the impact of that all the way across the economy. Aisha mentioned earlier, things like this, they have second-order effects because, of course, they crush consumer spending. And that is hospitality, that is vast amounts of the rest of the economy. So this sort of stuff can really bite. And it's also going to pose an acute political problem for the government because they, ever since Liz Truss, of all people, did the energy price cap, the government is now on the hook for a lot of this, right? Because either it lets this go up, in which case it will be directly blamed in a way that it wouldn't if the price cap didn't exist, or it has to maintain the cap, which means eating the costs itself out of taxpayers' money. And that is going to put more pressure on other parts of the budget. We're already seeing ministers talking about pushing back ship contracts for defence. We've got a very controversial cuts planned to foreign aid, and it will only get worse from there.
Yeah. Let's take it to the Guardian, back to the Guardian, actually, Aisha. And this story about Nigel Farage. Muslim leaders have condemned his call to ban public prayer by Muslims in the UK.
Well, I mean, this is very typical for Nigel Farage, who really, really hates Muslims. But there's a very horrible kind of fashionable trend at the moment to really, really take it out on Muslims. It is Eid today. I am Muslim. Happy Eid, Eid Mubarak. I'm not coming here to do some sort of terrible takeover, but it is very, very depressing. I am Muslim. I am not a very religious person, but I am a Muslim. I get a lot of abuse for being a Muslim. I wouldn't shy away from issues we should be talking about, and I've talked about this a lot. I've talked about it in Parliament, things like grooming gangs, social cohesion, you know, how can we have better integration? These are all really important issues, but it really, really troubles me that so many politicians, Nigel Farage, Kemi Badenoch, we had Nick Timothy, just really going for Muslims in a way that feels quite un-British, actually. It feels this is a group of people getting absolutely picked on and targeted. Most Muslims are just ordinary people like you and me. They want a peaceful life, they want to work hard, they want their kids to do well, and they're constantly under attack. And
but Kemi Badenoch actually talking about that, what's kind of un-British, and saying that and question whether the events fitted within the norms of British culture.
So I think that the version of the cultural coherence argument, which perhaps has some merit, is that today, in general, not to do with a particular community, but in general, we have fewer common touchstones than we used to. right? We no longer have 5 television channels. We no longer grow up listening to the same radio or consuming the same media. Schools no longer teach you a kind of canon of books and literature and poetry. And so there were fewer common touchstones, right? But a positive programme would be about trying to find more of those and maybe build some of them. And you know what? A lot of Muslims would go to those events. But this is simply picking something which is just make sort of a visual spectacle which makes some people uncomfortable and trying to claim that that's the problem. Now, I feel very strongly about the freedom of people to practice their religion in public. I think it's shameful when Jews are afraid to wear their religious headgear. I support and have spoken up about the freedom to pray around abortion clinics, a very sensitive subject. But again, prayer doesn't hurt anyone, right? And I think that exactly the same thing is true of this. There are important issues that need dealing with. Aisha mentioned some of them. But this is literally just, I think that looks a bit weird, let's ban it, which is just not a basis for public policy.
OK, let's completely change subject, and we're going to talk about Tina Turner, set to follow ABBA as the star of a hologram stage show. This is in the front page of the Metro.
I love this. I'm going to be going 100%. In fact, Henry and I are going to have a night out. Oh, yeah? We go clubbing afterwards, Henry.
Let's do it. It's a date.
OK, that is a date. I was really sceptical about going to that ABBA Voyage thing, and then I went, and I thought it was absolutely terrific. It was amazing. Everyone was in the dance.
They were there.
It was amazing. It was like a giant hen night. Gay men and lots of menopausal women. It was amazing. Henry, you'll be fine. Trust me, you'll have a good time. Trust me, you'll be fine. It was just great. It was full. It was joyful. So I'm all for this. I think it's great.
Do you want Tina to come back in this form?
I mean, I'm going. I don't know if Tina would have been my choice.
This is my Muslim dominance. You're going.
I'm being dragged to Swiftageddon, which is an all Taylor Swift cover at some point, so it can't be worse than that. But I do think it's really interesting, actually, this kind of technology, and the fact that for people who missed out on a chance to see these generational talents.
Tina Turner, we are coming. Booked, date sorted. Henry and Aisha, thank you both. Let's see what's coming up in the sport for you now. Action from a busy night of European football. 3 English teams progress.
I'm James Matthews, and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. James Matthews from Sky News. Can I ask, why was Gillian Maxwell invited to your daughter Chelsea Clinton's wedding in 2010? Maria, did you offer to President Trump your Nobel Peace Prize?
I presented the President of the United States the medal.
Free, wherever you get your news.
Bang, bang. You can hear it hitting the windows.
Our houses are okay.
As bad as all of this is, it could have been much worse. Today, this land they call sacred is at the heart of America's electric car revolution.
To me, it's a sacred ground.
David Cameron says that you should vote through funding for Ukraine. What do you say to that?
I really don't care what David Cameron has to say.
Did you stay at the apartment of Jeffrey Epstein?
I'm not answering any questions about him.
I've covered some of the biggest stories in the world. Mr. Patel, did you endanger public safety when you said the killer was in custody? Mr. Hexter, does your past behaviour make you unfit to serve?
Escort coming out!
San Quentin houses America's largest death row. They rarely allow cameras onto the condemned block. James Matthews, Sky News.
It's one step closer to getting out, to getting off death row.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Mr. Trump, James Matthews from Sky News.
Hey, James.
Mr. Musk, has your ignorance and ego cost Ukrainian lives? Vladimir Putin calls you outstanding. What do you call him, sir? James Matthews from Sky News, Mr. Mamdani.
I have to be honest, when you said you were from Sky News, I just got very excited. Could you repeat the question one more time?
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Welcome to the world.
Come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? This is the war game.
There were a number of armed security.
We want to discover, to find out what's really going on.
Everything you need to know about British politics in about 20 minutes.
I actually don't like political drama.
So, where next?
Available wherever you get your podcasts.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Big Sky News journalist. Ed Conway. Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us?
Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office.
Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you.
So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Richard and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
Time now to get all the very latest sports news with Mike.
Yeah. After 4 bids, the latest thought to be £15 million, Liverpool insist they're still talking to Villa.
I was captain of a massive football club at Aston Villa. I've been there 10, 11 years. Your brain starts ticking a bit. Are you ready for a new challenge?
What is happening with Gareth Barry?
I was talking with Martin O'Neill privately before, so he knows our ideas clearly.
Rafa phoned me up, offered me a host of players that I didn't really want. That's not the name of the game.
We didn't have the funding to complete it.
Then it was a case of, right, what do I need to do to get the move done?
It was just like lobbing a hand grenade in.
I was fuming.
Fined 2 weeks' wages, banned from the training ground.
If he'd gone to Liverpool in the manner which he did, he wouldn't have gone with my blessing. I would never have spoken to him again.
To make that so personal against Martin O'Neill, I'm amazed he ever actually played for Aston Villa again.
Who would have thought Gareth Barry's Villa career would come to this?
There were chants of Judas, booed every time he touched the ball.
Mentally, it was a real tough period. I regret doing some things.
If you got into the Champions League, would you stay?
If we're playing Champions League football at Aston Villa, then there's no need to look elsewhere anyway.
Would that be a definite?
Yeah, it'd have to be a definite now, wouldn't it? Liverpool was still there a year later. Arsenal come as well.
It was a huge message that Manchester City was serious.
They made me feel wanted, and the ambition is the main thing.
You know what means money, money, money.
I did take a lot of stick to win the FA Cup, to win the Premier League. It was a big relief to win a trophy in your career.
From youth team player to Premiership regular is rarely an easy one. It's certainly a busy time for Gareth Barry, with a 5-year senior contract waiting for him at Villa Park.
The manager's had a word to me about it, but hopefully I'll be signing it soon.
Something you're clearly wanting to stay at Villa?
Yeah, I would want to be staying at Villa for a few years to come.
I was really shy, thinking I should be back in the youth team dressing room rather than making my debut and training with the first team every day. It sort of come really fast and took me probably 2 seasons to really feel like I should be there.
Gareth was, I mean, he was only a young kid when he came, and before we knew it, he was in the first team changing room. Very quiet until I got hold of him.
He's such a level-headed kid that I don't mind talking about a 17-year-old boy because nothing would daunt him.
He suddenly joined the first team squad and he just looked at home. Nothing seemed to faze him. You can always tell because of the senior players suddenly started talking about him. Oh, Gaffer, he's decent, isn't he, you know? You'd say something to Gareth and he'd either say yes or no. That was it, really. You'd say, like, you enjoying it, training with the first team? He'd say, yeah. And that was it.
I can just remember during a pre-season, we were playing him in midfield, and Tony McAndrew and I, at the side of the pitch, just thought we were looking for a couple of centre-halves. We got a lot of midfield players in that particular year group, and we just looked at Gareth and thought, well, let's try him at centre-half, see how he does.
I left school as a midfielder. Find yourself training with players that are used to training on a regular basis. It was all a bit too fast for me, and people forget I played probably 150 games at left centre-half, left-back, before I eventually made that move back into midfield.
I thought he might lack a bit of pace as a central midfield player. The role that he played there in a 3 was perfect for him. You know, if Gareth Barry could be half as good as Gareth Southgate was, then you'd certainly have a couple of outstanding players at the heart of the defence. And Hugo Ekiok on the right-hand side, they just complemented each other, and obviously they were one of the main reasons why we were so successful during that period.
And Barry!
When he had the football, you just do so much quality when you have the ball. You know, it was one of them where you look up and go, young lad's just picking out that pass.
What a ball that was.
It didn't faze him, though.
Time for a look at the weather now.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
Well, over the next few days, high pressure will keep the weather fine and pleasantly warm. But from Monday, it'll turn colder and more unsettled. There'll be a mostly fine start tomorrow, if chilly, but do expect some mist and fog patches. They will soon lift through the morning, while early cloud over parts of eastern England and eastern Scotland will break up and clear. That'll leave almost unbroken sunshine across the UK and Ireland. Temperatures will remain above average and it'll be notably warmer for parts of Scotland and northern England than today. Well, the afternoon will be mostly dry with pleasant sunshine, but the northern and western Isles will turn cloudy and blustery. Expect some patchy light rain there too. Saturday looks mainly fine, but northern Scotland will be rather cloudy with drizzly outbreaks possible.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
Well, that was the wrap. Thank you so much for watching. All the top stories coming up right here on Sky News. Do stay with us.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report. And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond. You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
This is Sky News, the headlines. As fears of a full-blown energy crisis persist, Iran's foreign ministry tells Sky News they cannot be expected to show restraint until the US and Israel stop their military campaign.
Do you think it would be really realistic to offer olive branch to those who want to behead you?